One. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Fran and Friends. Today, I have my wonderful friend here, Abigail McCarrel, and she is a licensed family and child therapist, right? Yeah.
Licensed clinical social worker.
God, here I go again.
Okay. You talk to so many people. I don't know you keep everybody straight.
I need to keep myself straight. So, with that said, Abby has her own practice where she helps families and children who, what she likes to call big baffling behaviors. And inside of the conversation, it's usually the parents that are frustrated with their children. And the parents are looking for answers because they've already reached the plateau of what they call their patience. So Abby comes in and helps them with techniques that she's gathered and learned from neuroscience, and she helps to reestablish, I forgot what it's called, Abby, the primordial or primordial?
Primitive reflexes.
Primitive reflexes to help the parents identify areas that they could self-regulate themselves.
Yes, absolutely.
So, Abby, if you could just share with the people just a little bit about your background and
yeah. So, like I said earlier, I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I've been working as a therapist for over 30 years. I started out in child welfare, working with children from hard places, what we like to call them, from the foster and adoption world. A lot of trauma, a lot of abuse, a lot of neglect. And back in the day, we used to call them severely emotionally disturbed. And I've been thinking about that label lately and what a misnomer it is. They actually were doing well given what they had been through. And it was the world that was severely emotionally disturbed around them that created these challenging episodes, right? So that's where I cut my teeth, was with these really vulnerable, quite precious children way back in the day. And in that agency, I went from doing residential treatment center, to working in the group home with teenage boys. Then I moved into the foster care and adoption program, and that was really fun. I kind of helped to get the adoption program started for the agency. It was 5 acres up in Altadena. And then I moved into clinical supervision. And around the time that I left the agency work, I started private practice before computers. Imagine all of those forms and everything to fill out by hand. But I eventually took some time off and had felt like I'd spent a lot of my life helping take care of other people's kids. So I stayed home for about 10 years. And when I was ready to go back to work, my girls were launched. I kind of had to do some research, like what's going on out there now. I had really immersed myself in my family and with my girls, and had lost touch and track of what was going on in the field. So I started talking to my colleagues that were still around and friends that I knew, and it was pretty clear I didn't want to go back and do agency work. That's hard. That's for the young.
Why is it hard doing agency work?
Yeah, it is incredibly time consuming in the social work field to meet all of the paperwork demands, to get all of the funding, to run these government-owned programs or government-subsidized programs. You have to be so meticulous with meeting their requirements for how you document. And that burden makes it unfun to do the work. You're constantly behind. The life of a social work, doing real social work, is just, it's really hard. It's just very, very, a great deal of your energy is used up trying to meet the funding demands, and then you have little energy left over to work with the clients. So
Wow.
when I did my research, that hadn't changed in 10 years. As a matter of fact, it kind of got worse. And so I knew I didn't have the energy to do that. So I revisited the idea of doing private practice again.
Mhm.
And I originally thought, Fran, that I was going to just focus on, like children who were in the process of getting adopted or working with foster kids, because that's what I knew.
Yeah.
But a colleague of mine at church who was retiring as a therapist and a researcher, a clinical psychologist, started talking to me about the gifted field. And this is where she had done most of her clinical work. And so that was really interesting to me because all three of my girls were in the GATE program, the Gifted and Talented program in the school system. But I really never paid it much attention. I really just thought, oh, it's a few extra activities that they do that are fun, but it was never something that I really understood and what it meant to be in a gifted and talented program. So my friend really thought that my philosophy, my belief about working with the parents and working with the families would work really nicely with these parents of really gifted kids, because they're pulling their hair out. Like, gifted kids are so complicated, and they're a mixed bag of really advanced skills and maturity, and then turn of a hat, they're just 5 years younger, 10 years younger. It's really confusing to the
Their so-
kids and to the
their social
parents.
skills aren't
Hmm.
equal to their
Yeah,
gifted abilities.
we call it asynchrony.
Asynchrony. Okay.
Asynchronous development. Um, so I thought, well, that could be interesting. Maybe that's a niche that I could dive into, that there's not a lot of people working with, right? So there's a need, and that might be a good business plan for me. So I started studying, I started getting, certified in some things, and it just kind of took off because there was a great need for it. And so it's a subspecialty of mine, working with gifted kids and their families. But I don't just work with gifted kids. I work with just about any kind of family with children. Um, Being a family therapist, I sometimes will get inquiries about adult children and adult conflicts going on. And that's just not in my wheelhouse as much. I work with some of those parents, but when it's time to put the parents together with the adult children, that's usually not in my area of expertise.
Okay.
That is about me, but was something really important I want to tell you and your audience. You mentioned that I work with kids with big baffling behaviors.
Yeah,
That,
because I was going to ask you about like the nervous
mhm,
system and how
yeah,
that plays into how your practice,
yeah.
how you help people.
Well, what I want to say about that phrase, though, is that it's not my phrase. I think I mentioned this to you the last time. So when I took about 10 years off with my girls and then went back to work and everything had changed, the parenting field was moving into the positive parenting direction, as opposed to what I had left 10 years previously, which was all of the token economies and the level systems, the rewards, consequences, grab bags, stickers, charts, all of that behavior modification stuff was
Mhm.
what we did back in the late, late,
During
like
my time.
the previous millennia. And I was really drawn towards this new idea of approaching children from a much more compassionate perspective, that they weren't just little robots that you could manipulate and make them do things. And I fell into the work with Robin Goebel. I think I mentioned her last time I was on here. It's
You did.
Robin with a Y, and Goebel, Gobbel. I encourage anybody to go check out her website. She has a podcast called The Baffling Behavior Show.
Okay.
And if you want to hear more of this on a regular basis, then that would be a great thing to explore. So I just want to give her credit where credit is due, because a lot of things that I talk about are learnings that I am trying to embody from her and incorporate into my work.
Mhm.
So it's not my original thinking, but I what I love about working with Robin is that she really takes the neuroscience and makes it applicable. So that's always been a goal of mine, is to make the psychology make sense to people and have it be usable, right? Like you could study and research and do all this stuff, but if you don't know how to use it, it's not going to be of any help to you.
Oh, no, it isn't. So you got into her work. How did you get wind of her?
You know what? I wish I could remember, but it was in the pandemic. And I had read something of hers, a post or something, and was really drawn to her work. And then she implemented a professional training program for parent helpers and therapists. So I was like, I'm going to do that the minute she has it up and running. So I wish I could remember if it was a post or an article or someone told me about her, but it was like, it just, that, when you read something and all of a sudden all the light bulbs go off and it just resonates.
It just makes sense. Yeah.
It just makes sense to you. That was my experience with her. So I was thinking about what to talk about today, since you said, whatever you want to talk about. And I one of the things that I think is really important for people to understand and have a conversation about is, what is behavior when it comes to kids, even people, So I wanted to pose that question to you and say, what do you think behavior is? Let's focus on children, because we both have them. We know that experience. When they're having a behavior problem, what do you think is going on?
When they're having a behavior problem, that's telling me that something is wrong, that I need to ask questions. In the version that I am now, that's what I would do. So,
Great. Well, you've been listening to your own podcast then.
Yeah. I glean so much from it after I go back and press replay. I'm like, oh, I didn't pick that up the first time. But no, like, that's what I think when kids are having behavior issues. There's something that's incongruent. I need to give them some type of attention. And what's at the bottom of this behavior? Because I think they can only express so much verbally, that they need to in some way express that and reach out, so that way that they can get the parents' attention.
Yes. Well, I would say then you are well on your way, Fran, to making one of the core shifts that I first start with when I work with parents. And it's a lens change of understanding what behavior is. Yeah. Most of the time, similarly to what you wrote in your book, parents come to me with the belief that their child needs to be fixed, helped, done something to, that they're doing, and that they're bad, they're manipulative, they're trying to make problems, they're lying, they're stealing, whatever it is that they're doing, right? And with full intention, right, that these kids are doing this on purpose. For, like you said, maybe for attention or to get their way or to manipulate their parents or something like that. And the shift is really moving away from behavior as a characterological problem, like you're a bad kid, you're a manipulative kid, to a view of behavior as simply information. Like you said.
Yeah.
Like something's going on. We need to get a little bit deeper. We need to understand a little bit more. So if what we see from other people is information, what's it information about, right? What is it trying to tell us? But just that shift from they're doing this on purpose and they're bad to this is just as like anything else. It's like data. It's information. Or as Robin would say, it's a cue or a clue about what's going on. Then there's a softening. There is a more gentle feeling that comes along with viewing another person as having challenging episodes that give us information, as opposed to they're doing something to us, right? So it shifts our perspective into, okay, so if this is information and they're trying to tell us something, let's get curious about what they're trying to tell us. And you mentioned that earlier, which is awesome, about going underneath and figuring it out. So Behavior then is, in my new way of looking at it, something very different than what I used to think. Behavior is like, when it is a clue like that, is simply an expression or an outward presentation of what is going on inside the nervous system, what is happening for that child. And it is, I think we mentioned this last time that we were together. There's many different ways to analyze and kind of look at what that behavior means. We talked about neuroception last time.
Yes.
I believe the inside, the outside, and the in between. So, just kind of piggybacking on that there's those three planes of awareness in the mind that our body is constantly assessing if we're safe or not safe.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're not feeling safe on the inside.
I'm still here.
Okay. Mom, it's just me now. That's a big face of mine.
That beautiful face of yours.
Okay, well, come back.
Okay. Because I was trying to do, when the speaker goes, that it should have the one person up there that's speaking versus both of us up there.
I see, but I want to talk to you that anyway. Okay. Anyway, so we were talking about neuroception, about how those behaviors are a representation of either what's going on in the inside of their body with all their physiological systems, what's going on in their environment, does it feel safe out in the world, and in their relationships. So if they're having a hard time, right, one of those areas is stressed, or maybe more than one, right? And I don't think we mentioned this last time. Maybe we did. I talked to so many people, it's hard to remember. But
it's all education for me.
Yeah, if they're quote unquote acting out, that's that one of their core needs are not being met, right? And you said attention, which is very common. It's a very common way of looking at kids, that they need attention, right? I like to always help parents switch out that word attention with connection.
Oh, and then I wanted to ask, what are the kids' core needs?
Yes, I want to get back to that. But yeah, so what changes for you when I say think about it as connection versus attention?
I think that's more personal.
Mm-hmm.
It's more of like a heart to heart connection.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's a softening. There's a shift that happens with that. That it's not that they're seeking attention, because that sounds bad, right? Mm-hmm. In some ways, like they just acting out for attention. What about if they're just having a hard time because they're lacking connection and they need support and help?
And that makes me feel more compassionate towards that.
Exactly. Exactly.
I like that.
And it's in that compassion that you can help and heal that child. Right? If you're not in a state of compassion and flexibility and openness in your mind, of gratitude and acceptance, then you're not going to be in a mind space to be able to help that child.
Wow.
So I love that shift.
So the importance of the words that we're using.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow. Can shift the way that we think or show up in that space.
Absolutely.
Oh, that was a lesson all in itself.
So when we talk about the unmet needs of behavior, we talk about 4 unmet needs, and they are to be safe. Pretty sounds easy, right? It's more complicated, but to be safe, to feel seen, to feel soothed, and to feel secure.
Okay.
So if you're getting some behavior that doesn't make sense to you, that you want to stop, that you don't like, you can assume that one or more of those needs isn't being met. And so this is where working with, someone who's been trained with this, or a therapist that's familiar with this approach, can be really helpful, because it can be tricky, right? Kids' behavior can be really tricky. Like, what is that need that's not being met? So when we talk about safety, again, I'm going to use it as the guinea pig today, Fran. What do you think I mean when I say their unmet need is to feel safe?
Their unmet need is to feel safe is that The first thing that I think of is that a child is running to their parent because they feel scared, they feel afraid,
Mm-hmm.
and they want to be held.
Mm-hmm.
They want to feel that they can be protected, that they are
Yes.
protected.
Yes. That is absolutely correct. That is definitely part of it. And when we're talking about unmet needs to feel safe, we're also talking about all of the emotional components of feeling safe. Because what
So
if,
validated too.
what was that?
So validated as well.
Mm-hmm. What if the person that is supposed to be there to help meet those needs is the one you're afraid of,
Hmm.
which could be really big or could be really small. And let me just explain that for a minute. So when I talk about safety, we're talking about emotional safety. Yes, of course, we're going to assume that kids are physically safe, but oftentimes when they're having stressful episodes or behaviors, they're perceiving some kind of danger that's a felt sense of not feeling safe. It's not that they're not physically safe. And an objective person would come in and look at the situation. There's nothing dangerous here. But it could be something as small as it's time to do your homework. That could be perceived as dangerous to the child. Simply telling a child no could be perceived as dangerous to a child. It's a felt sense that I don't like this. This doesn't feel good inside. This isn't what I want. This isn't what I want to do. And so I'm having feelings come up of anger, resistance, stubbornness. I don't want to do this. I'm tired. Maybe I'm hungry or thirsty. But all these things are going on and they're not feeling safe inside their nervous system. So when we talk about meeting the needs of safety, it's the emotional need for safety, the felt sense of feeling safe. It's about coming into interaction with that child and offering them cues of safety from you, the parent or the caregiver. So first and foremost, the most important cue of safety is that the caregiver is regulated and not upset.
Mm.
The parent comes in agitated, angry, frustrated, out of sorts, that child is going to read danger, 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 right?
Mm-hmm.
This is not going to go well. That parent has already joined or merged with that child's dysregulation and they're having a hard time.
Yeah.
So that we talked a little bit about that last time with parent self-regulation. But assuming that the parent is regulated enough that they're able to listen and not give consequences or yell or shame the child in some way.
Right.
We get really granular with parents about what feeling safe can look like. So we get really detailed and we talk about the volume of the parent's voice, right? So a child that's scared, a child that's acting in a way that's challenging, needs to hear a gentle voice. They don't need to hear a harsh, get it together, come on, snap out of it, it's time to do that. That's going to sound really disconcerting to the child. So
I'm having flashbacks of my 21-year-old in 4th grade, and she's like, I can remember yelling at her, like, do your homework. And she's like, I don't like that you're talking to me like that.
Yeah, literally is a cue of danger. So we talk about the volume of voice. We talk about the pitch of the voice. Mm-hmm. This is really interesting. This is a lot of the work I have to do with dads. Mm-hmm. Because dads come into the relationship with their little kids as like the giant in the room. Mm-hmm. And they have this very deep voice, right? Very powerful and deep voice, which way, way back in our evolution sounded like a growling bear, tiger, predator of some kind. So the male voice in and of itself is very triggering, especially to women and children, because in our archetypal history of our species, that meant somebody was going to literally eat us and we were in danger for our life. So with those dads, I try and get them to raise the pitch of their voice a little bit higher. Like, remember when you were talking to your infant when your child was an infant and you were having that nice, like, come on, you can do it, that kind of a lighter, it's called mother ease in the parenting world. So it's that light sing-songy kind of, it's
Yeah,
very
like when you
gentle.
have a little toddler and you're like, "Hey, baby, how you doing?"
Exactly.
Almost like a falsetto.
And for men, it can be. It's much more difficult for men to get up that range. But if you can just pitch it up a little bit, it's a little less threatening,
Okay,
right? So
cool.
the volume of the voice, the pitch of the voice, and then the how much you're talking is really important too. When your kids are dysregulated and out of sorts and out of control and having a really hard time, they're not able to process a lot of words. So it's really common for parents to want to come in and start lecturing and telling them what they should do and don't forget to do this and snap out of it and just like blah, blah, blah. And it's like that Charlie Brown cartoon. Wow, wow, wow. They're
Yeah, yeah,
not.
yeah. I could just imagine a little kid on the floor just like going like this, trying to, I guess, utilizing his body to help him figure out what's going on.
And it's not just little kids. It's all human beings.
Mm.
When we're upset and frustrated, dysregulated or triggered, we're not processing words very well.
Mm.
So with anybody that you come into that's having a hard time, the less you say, the better.
Mm.
And it's really a time to just be present with that person. Robin's program is called Being With, and that's essentially the core value of it. Just be with them, right? She talks about witnessing their dysregulation, and the goal not being to fix or change them. It's not to stop their behavior. Of course, we don't want danger, physically dangerous behavior we need to stop. But other than that, they're having a legit reaction to whatever they're perceiving inside, outside, or in the between, or from their past that is really scaring them. And so they need, what was that?
They're looking for a safety cue.
Yes, they're looking for safety. So we're going to be quiet. We're going to do a lot of active listening. We might say what we see. I see you're angry. I see you're frustrated. I see you're crying. Okay, I can tell this isn't going well for you. Okay, yeah, okay. So it's not, at that point, there's nothing that you can do except wait and be a safe presence with them and wait for that owl brain to come back online just a little bit. Because they can't process the words, they can't process the language. So that's another cue of safety, is to just, okay, I need to be a really good listener, an active listener. And my goal isn't to fix them. There's really isn't anything wrong with them. They're just having a hard time, and I need to be present with them during it, which is new and hard for parents. It's uncomfortable. Like, I'm just gonna sit here. There's some other things, some small things that you can do. Open up your body. So we talk about eye contact, right? Yeah. Eye contact can be really reassuring, or it can be really scary.
Should we, when we're having this eye contact with them, depending on how tall they are, should we be getting down at their level having the eye contact, or?
Well, yeah, you have to, right? Because then it's really not eye contact. But with respect to eye contact, I'm going to talk about the height in a second, which is really perceptive of you to pick up on that. But with eye contact, you have to know your kid, because there are some children, maybe ones that especially fall in the neurodivergent category, that do not like eye contact. So if you're trying to like get their gaze, like, look at me, I'm trying to help you, it's going to be scary to them. Like, those eyes, don't look at me. So knowing your kid is really important. And yet there's other kids or people, right? Maybe, people in your personal life who are searching for your eyes. Like, can you see me? Right? So eye contact is something you have to experiment a little bit with, depending on who you're with. But you're right, Fran. The next thing I talk to the parents about is the height differential, right? Back to the analogy of the giant in the room, like the dad coming in. It's a perceived threat that you're towering over me and, possibly wanting something from me and maybe could hurt me. So that, we don't really know. That may or may not be going on, but you can, again, experiment a little bit with getting either at eye contact level or a little bit below even.
Mm.
So if you're in the room with another person, maybe you're both standing, maybe you sit down. And if they're sitting in a chair or something, maybe you sit next to them and just kind of get a little bit lower at the table. Or with a child, maybe they're sitting on the couch, you sit on the floor.
So is that them a sense of like their power back or empowering them?
I would say the power plays into it, but it's more about what feels safe.
Okay.
It's not that they need to be in control of you or the situation. It's just that you are scaring them. And this is a way to show them that you're not scary. Like, I am so not scary. I had a dad once. Oh, this was so cute. They were at soccer practice or something, and the little girl started having a hard time, and he goes, yeah, we were sitting down and she was carrying on, so I just laid on the grass because that got lower than her. And that little thing that he did brought a little bit more of regulation to her so that they could finally get on with their day and do what they needed to do. So that's just another cue of safety that you can offer. So you're getting this the gist of it, that there's all these tiny little things that you can do. The last thing to think about with this is your facial expressions. Well, the face and the body, honestly. There's like 80 some muscles in your face.
Oh my gosh. And I'm so terrible at my facial expressions. So I wear my emotions on my face.
Well, you can just see, if you're talking to a kid and you're trying to keep like a calm, soft face and just the littlest thing, right? And that they're so perceptive. It's like they know it's the mom look, right? It doesn't have to be it. It can be the tilt of it. My mom did that. But it's red as danger. So that's another thing to I send parents sometimes to the mirror to practice having a soft face and seeing what they really look like when they make the mom face and how scary that can be. And then of course your body, right? Like relaxing your shoulders and just getting the tension out. Maybe coming in with open palms, right? As opposed to, tensed up and defensive and leaning in, just like real open up the body, open up the palms. And so there is a welcoming kind of a feeling.
Got it.
So those are a lot of things to think about at once, right? So it takes practice, right? But they're all things that parents can do to shift the dynamic between them and their kids and offer more safety, which is the first unmet need of behavior. So then we move into being seen. So again, back to you, safe, seen, soothed, and secure. When I say it's important for kids to feel seen, what does that mean to you?
So the kid, for them to be seen, to me, is that they want to spend some quality time with me. And they want to connect.
Yes. Yeah. So important. And when you have a challenging kiddo and they're having behaviors that are just really, really hard, they want that to be seen. They want that to be heard and known, because it is remember, it's communication, it's information, it's data.
Yeah.
So we may not understand it. We may not get, the human brain is so complicated. We may not completely understand why they're having this reaction, but if we can help them be seen in a way that is very authentic, that is a way of helping them regulate a little bit more. So that might look like saying things. The intervention that I teach to parents is called "Say What You See."
Okay, like how you were mentioning earlier.
Mm-hmm.
If you saw them acting like angry or moving their body, I see that you are feeling angry. So address that, or that's what we're seeing is that.
I even before you address the emotion, we're going to address the actual what you see. So I see you're moving your arms. I see I can tell you're just so out. You're just laying on the floor. You're so exhausted. I can see that you're crying. I can tell your face is getting red. Wow. you're taking really, really a lot of short breaths, and now you're getting really winded. The physical things that you can see. I see that you're pacing back and forth. Wow, there must be something really going. So it's like a curiosity. I can see these things. Wow, this isn't. This is. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. I'm seeing it. I see what you're showing me. They need to be seen. And then when they're with the words that they're saying, another part of being seen is something called active listening. Is that a familiar phrase to you? Active listening. Yeah. So that's really made its way into our culture from the psychology field. So it's simply a repeating back or a summarizing of what you're hearing. Oh, okay. You are not doing your homework right now. I hear you. Okay. You are going to march yourself into your room and get out all your toys and forget about everything. I hear what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to agree with it or that you're going to let it happen, but boy, you need to see it. Because until you really see it, they're going to give you a bazillion chances to see it. They're going to keep doing it until you can acknowledge that this is actually going on for them.
So what is that doing for them when we are addressing that? Like when we are saying, okay, I see that you're running. I see that your arms are flailing. What does that do for the child? Are we reinstating their safety, or we're just reinforcing that we see their movements and their behavior?
Well, you're doing that for sure. You're reinforcing that you're seeing it. Well, I move away from reinforcing because that's kind of an old behavior term. But what it does for the child is that it helps them not feel like they're alone in their suffering.
Okay.
Like you're with me, like you get it. One of our core needs as human beings on the planet is to be understood by others. And if you can say what you see and use active listening, those are some good attempts to get close to maybe reflecting back as opposed to reinforcing. Like you're reflecting back what it is that they're showing you so that they know that you're with them. Because these big feelings that these kids are having, humans are having, can be really, really traumatic, right? I mean, lots of things happen, and there's lots of neurodiversity out there that makes, seemingly calm situations seem very safe. So we need to make sure that they know that we're with them, because when they go through this alone, Fran, it becomes traumatic. I mean, bad things happen to people all the time. The trauma is lessened. The trauma is healed and mitigated somewhat if you have someone with you.
Yeah. So are these the spaces like you said earlier about the people that we're supposed to run to, and they're the ones that are creating the not safe space? Is this where I guess we learned, what are those things called when we are trying to figure out our own problems as kids? I forgot what it's called, like our own behavior. Like, okay, so since we didn't have the parent to say, hey, this right here is okay and you're fine, and we manipulate in our own mind that, okay, well, if this happens, this is what I have to do so I can feel safe. I go eat some food so I can feel safe. What is that behavior called again?
Well, I think
coping mechanism.
A coping mechanism, yeah.
So like if a child doesn't have that safety, or they don't have that healthy parent to provide that, figure out their own coping mechanism to
and it can be really bad. It can be really self-destructive, but it is honestly their best effort to feel better. It's not like people are trying to do bad and make life difficult for themselves. They're grasping. Maybe one time food helped me feel better. Maybe one time going for a run helped me feel better, So yes, it is definitely connected to that. And in some degree, I think you're talking a little bit about things that can be triggering as well.
Okay.
But to see all that, to as a parent, to know that that's going on, to kind of look past the behavior to the fact that you just really don't want to be alone and you're scared right now, is hugely healing. It's hugely impactful and powerful in that relationship. So we go from feeling safe to feeling seen with active listening and the saying what you see. And oftentimes, like I spend months just doing that with parents.
Just
Months.
those two steps.
Mhm. Those
Wow.
2 steps.
Okay.
It's because it's so not what they're used to.
So
They're
they're learning a new behavior. So it's something they have to re-implement or learn so that they can
Yeah.
teach the
And
children.
it's not a intervention or a strategy that might cause immediate change either.
For sure.
It does sometimes though.
Hmm.
I have some parents that come back and say, well, we started doing this and things have shifted remarkably. So, who knows why with that particular family, but it can make a really quick change to just feel safe and to
Yeah.
feel seen.
Yeah.
By-
No, it took me about a year for me and my kid.
Yeah. I mean, that's about it. I mean, and I often work long term with families too. This is changing brains. It takes time.
Mhm.
So then the third unmet need of behavior is to feel soothed. So we have safe, seen,
Being soothed.
soothed. So again, back to you. What do you think that means? You're hitting on it a little bit before.
Okay. I was going to say, I feel like my previous answer was the soothing.
Yes.
Well, I feel like it's almost the same thing as safety. Or being seen almost. They want me to be in the same space with them,
Uh-huh.
so they can know that I'm there.
Yeah.
That's my best answer.
That's okay. It's all interrelated. Being with them for sure, not being alone, being seen. With the soothing part, I think more of the compassion,
Mm,
right? This is where compassion comes in and empathy. So this is where you're going to go back to some things you said earlier. Oh, I see that you look like you're frustrated. I can feel you're so angry. It's the empathy. It's the emotional component, right? It's nuanced, right? So in safety, yes, there's emotions there, but we're working on physically presenting ourselves as safe. In the scene part, yes, there are emotions there, but we're really working hard to witness and be with them in their suffering. And then in the soothed part, this is where we dig real deep into the emotional components of what's going on for them.
mm,
Oh, this is so hard. This hurts your heart, right? Depending on the age of the kids. This is so
yeah.
frustrating for you. Of course it is. It makes complete sense to me that this would happen. And you're
Mm,
having this reaction. There is a normalizing of it because remember, everybody's reaction is subjective based on their neuroception and their experiences from the past. Who are we to say that what they're experiencing right now isn't valid?
mm,
Right?
yeah.
So we can't sit in judgment of that. We can only be with it. So we be with it with empathy and compassion and love and care and kindness and so much patience, right? And that takes fortitude. That takes practice. That is not something that is often easy for parents to do because we're busy and we need to get on to the next thing and to be sitting with and being with them in this state of emotional dysregulation and big feelings can be really hard for parents. But then that's another connecting with them on an emotional level does something else really wonderful, especially for little kids, but also for parents too sometimes, is it helps to build their emotional intelligence,
Mm,
which is the ability to understand what feelings are, to understand other people's feelings. How do you handle your coping skills and all of that? So when you can start using feeling words to throw out there, it seems like you're feeling really angry. Wow, look at that red face. You look really frustrated.
mm,
Is to begin, especially with the little kids, to give them some vocabulary around what they're experiencing, right? So
yeah.
then in turn, they can come and say, I'm feeling frustrated. I mean, isn't that one of the goals is for kids to be able to say those things?
Absolutely.
To know what their needs are and to be able to come to you and say, I'm feeling scared, I'm feeling frustrated, I don't know what to do. So we start labeling it and exploring that emotion with, of course, going back to with such a kind voice and such a compassionate approach, so they feel soothed. And another way of thinking about it too, Fran, is when we get upset, the more upset we get, the lower we go in our brain, and
Oh,
the
God.
younger parts of our brain are working, right? So a whiny, crying, tantruming, melting down kid is a child that you need to interact with as if they are 1 or 2 years old, in all honesty, even adults, right? Because that's where they are in their brain. They've gone right down to the brainstem in such a I guess a melted down kind of a way. So the soothing, think of it as talking to a much younger part of the brain, right? And
So the lower patience that we have, we can think about it as like a kindergartner or like a grade school kind of thing going on. The lower the patience you have, the lower the grade level you're operating at.
exactly, the younger the part of the brain you're dealing with.
Got it.
Um, so lots and lots of soothing, and in this too, you can play around with physical affection. There, and again, this comes back to knowing your kids, like with the eye contact too. There are some kids that just generally don't like to be touched.
Mm-hmm.
They have, very sensitive sensory issues.
Mm-hmm.
So for those kids, you know that you're not going to approach and put your arm around them or try and pull them into your lap or give them a hug or anything like that, because it's going to be a cue of danger, right?
Mm, yeah.
But then there are some kids that will melt down and then they just run to you, right?
Yeah.
And they nuzzle in and they just need to be with you, right?
Yeah. I remember when I with my mom when I was younger, I would like want to give my mom a hug. So I'd go up to her and try to give her a hug. And she'd like, okay, that's enough. And I would think to myself as a kid, like, what is wrong with me? Why doesn't my mom want to give me a hug? Like I see all these other kids and their parents like giving them a hug. But here I am, I'm like,
Yeah. And that's so confusing and it not meeting your needs, right? From
yeah.
when you were little, to have that physical safety, that safety net for your big feelings, like the big loving arms that you could run to, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also a tool that we can experiment with depending on the kind of child that you're with or who you're with, because physical connection can be extremely grounding
Yeah.
for a crying child. So, but you're right, you bring up a really good point. It does have to match with what the sensory needs are and the emotional needs and the trauma of the caregiver or parent that's working with that child. I hard pressed to say that your mom was choosing to do that she I'd be hard pressed to say that she was trying to hurt you by not hugging you. But
Oh,
this was
I just figured that it's probably because of how my grandmother was. I don't think they really showed affection.
yeah.
But my kids are the opposite. Mine's are like,
Yeah, nice.
they all run into me. So,
Uh-huh. She read that as a cue of danger in her nervous system. That little kid running up and needing something from her at that moment.
mm,
She maybe was unable to give, so it was uncomfortable for her.
yeah.
So
Oh,
play around with physical affection in the emotional part of providing empathy. You can stroke their face, rub their head, run your fingers through their hair, scratch. Some kids like to have their head scratched.
mhm.
Anything that brings some sensory pleasure to them, and it can be a little bit distracting too, right? To do some of those things.
I used to chase my kids around. Do you remember the Jim Carrey, the claw?
No, but tell me.
Oh yeah, it was a movie where Jim Carrey he would play this game with this kid, and then his hand would be the claw, and it would be chasing the kid so that they could tickle them. So I
Oh
used to do
no,
that with my kids. They loved
that's fun. So that's playful, right? And
it.
and I'm assuming they liked it.
They loved it.
Yeah. So that's everybody in the playful part of their nervous system, and that's really really helpful in connecting and building in building safety in the relationship, or trust, as we like to call it sometimes. And it's really hard to be upset and stressed and frustrated when you're being playful. So that's really an important component of my work with parents, is to build more playfulness into the family, more family fun activities. It helps to strengthen the nervous system to be able to be playful like that. And then in the few minutes we have left, let's talk about the last one, which is secure, right? So we have safe, seen, soothed, and secure. Okay, so back to you again, Fran. Give me your best shot at what you think it means to offer security to a dysregulated child.
Security to me is helping them to be anchored
Mm-hmm.
in what they're feeling.
Yeah. You are so right, to be anchored somewhere. And that means that you're close by. You're close by enough, right? So in this dysregulation moment, you might have to play around and do some more experimenting with distance and how close you can get to that child, so they don't feel overwhelmed or threatened by you, but you're close enough if they need you. So it's like a dance at this part, the security. I'm here, but I'm not going to hurt you. I'm here. I'm not going to force you to do something you don't want to do. And importantly, I'm not gone. And even more importantly, I'm not sending you away, because I can't handle what's going on with you, which is what a timeout is. And I don't know about you, but I overdid the timeouts with my girls.
Oh, girlfriend, if we're going to have another episode, a whole nother episode on the previous parenting styles.
Well, maybe we can layer in how we've repaired since then too.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. That'd be great. I was also thinking about, like, when you were saying how the security for the child, I imagined the baby that is learning how to walk, and they love, their little teeter-tottering stage. They want you to be there, but not necessarily enough for you to, like, walk them, because this is something that they're trying to do on their own.
Yes, it's like a safety net or a safe haven for them, that you're there. But you're not there to hurt them, that you're going to not abandon them, and you're not going to send them away, which can get really tricky, because by now the parents might be feeling this is going on way too long and we need to get somewhere, and I'm starting to get dysregulated. And I really help parents see when that happens, right? Like, all of this safe, seen, soothed, and secure stuff can be really hard on the parents. So what can you do, right? If you need to give yourself a timeout, that is better than doing something or saying something that will jeopardize your relationship or emotionally or physically hurt that child, right? So if you're to the point where I just can't even take this anymore, I'm going to say something that's going to be shaming or hurt their feelings or mocking them. I mean, that's a big one too. Then it's okay for parents to say, I'm going to take a break, but I caution them. I say, even in that moment when you're just struggling, say something to them about, I'm having a hard time right now. This is not anything to do with you. This is not your fault, but I'm going to go get a drink of water, go to the bathroom. That's the best, right? Everyone has to go to the bathroom at some point. I need to go to the bathroom, but I'll be back. So go ahead and step out of the room for a minute, splash some water on your face, get a drink, get a crunchy snack, move around, take some deep breaths so that you can bring that regulation back to your nervous system, and go back out and again, present yourself as regulated in a safe presence, right? But again, we're talking about security. There could be a little bit of, the minute the parent starts to do that, the need for security might not be met, because the parent has to take care of themselves to prevent a bigger rupture in the situation. And if it's not ideal that the parent has to step out of the room, but when my parents come back and tell me that they had to do that, I give them so much encouragement for them. I'm like, wow, you noticed that this was happening. You took steps to take care of yourself. You didn't do all that other stuff that you used to do. Yes, they may have felt a little abandoned and like you weren't there for a few minutes, but that is so much better than screaming at them, giving them consequences, spanking them, whatever it is that they were doing before.
We don't have that much time, Abby, but I wanted to recap what
Sure.
it was that we learned from you, because there's so much that you left us with. I swear, hey guys, we just got a free therapy session. Honestly, we just did. So I'm just kind of going to recap what I feel like I heard from Abby. So the 4 things she talked about: the safety that the kids needs, the 4 basic needs that kids have is safety, is being safe, being seen, being soothed, and being secure. And also labeling our words, attention versus connection. Because one creates more compassion and versus another word, which attention is like, I guess there's more of a negative nuance versus a positive nuance. She also taught us about changing our pitches as parents. I think she called it mother ease. How dads, if they're coming in with their deep voices, they can pitch their voices a little bit higher so the kids can feel safe. And I think that's all that I remember right now.
That's a lot. Well, that's amazing, Fran. You were a good listener.
Tried to be. Yeah. So for those of you that would like to talk to Abby more, she has a website. It's called Welcome Home Family Therapy. But if Abby wants to share a little bit more about where you can find her, maybe on social media, Abby, please feel free.
It's all there. Just go to my website. All the links to all my social media is there. My contact information, all of the parameters for my practice. WelcomeHomeFamilyTherapy.com.
Okay, everybody. Well, thank you so much for joining me on Fran and Friends. And Abby's always a welcome guest here.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure.
Have a good night, everyone.